Nothing says, Tuesday morning, quite like finding a dying alien war beast bleeding phosphorescent blue all over your supposedly secure underground lab. The creature's wounds pulsed in perfect synchronization with my heartbeat, which was either the most beautiful coincidence in xenobiology or the most terrifying sign that I'd finally cracked under the pressure of hiding from 3 different government agencies. I should have called security. Should have triggered the containment protocols. Should have done literally anything except grab my emergency surgical kit and mutter, well, this is definitely going in the career-limiting moves file. The war beast, about the size of a large dog but built like a nightmare designed by committee, wheezed through gill slits that sparkled with bioluminescent blood. Its 6 eyes, arranged in a perfect hexagon around what I assumed was its head, tracked my movement with an intelligence that made my skin crawl. These things had been tearing through human colonies for the past 5 years, and here I was, about to perform emergency surgery on one. You know, I said, pulling on sterile gloves, most people spend their Tuesday mornings drinking coffee and pretending to read emails. But not me. I get to play doctor with humanity's favorite murder puppy. The creature made a sound somewhere between a purr and a death rattle. Its wounds were precise, surgical almost, nothing like the chaotic damage from human weapons. Something else had done this, something that knew exactly how to hurt it. I'd been studying war beast biology for 2 years, ever since my former research partner Elena had sold our consciousness mapping research to Helix Corporation and I'd been forced to go underground. Literally underground, as it turned out, in this abandoned subway station turned illegal laboratory. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was now using stolen corporate equipment to save the life of something designed to kill humans. The moment I made the first incision, everything changed. The neural feedback hit me like a freight train made of pure thought. Suddenly, I wasn't just Kira Valdez, disgraced xenobiologist with a caffeine addiction and trust issues. I was also something vast and fragmented, a consciousness stretched across space and time, speaking in the voices of thousands. We, remember, the first cutting, the first binding, asterisk. The voices, came from everywhere and nowhere, like a choir singing in frequencies my brain wasn't designed to process. My hands moved with impossible precision, guided by knowledge that wasn't mine, sealing wounds with techniques I'd never learned. You taste of sorrow and coffee, why do you heal what your kind fears, asterisk? Because, I said through gritted teeth, trying to maintain focus as alien memories flooded my consciousness, I've always had terrible survival instincts. The creature's breathing stabilized, its wounds sealing with an organic efficiency that made my medical training feel like cave painting. But the neural connection wasn't fading. If anything, it was strengthening, creating pathways in my brain that definitely weren't there 10 minutes ago. We are not what your kind believes us to be, asterisk. Yeah, well, join the club, I muttered, watching as the last of the phosphorescent blood faded to a healthy amber glow. I'm not what my kind believes me to be either. That's when the proximity alarm started screaming. Through the neural link, I felt the creature's recognition of the approaching signatures. Military-grade bioscanners, the kind that could detect cellular activity through 50 feet of concrete. The kind that Elena's new corporate masters had probably provided to track down people like me. They seek to use us, as they used you, asterisk. The creature, no, the entire Hivemind speaking through the creature, was right. I could feel the approaching soldiers, their intentions bright and sharp in the collective consciousness now flowing through my head. They weren't here to capture the war beast. They were here to capture both of us. Oh, fantastic, I said, grabbing my emergency kit and the few research drives I couldn't afford to lose. My Tuesday just got exponentially worse. We will not allow harm to come to the healer, asterisk. Before I could ask what that meant, the ground began to vibrate. Not with the footsteps of approaching soldiers, but with something else. Something that made the creature's gill slits flare with anticipation. Outside, in the abandoned tunnels that had become my sanctuary, I heard the sound of claws on concrete. Lots of claws. An entire pack of war beasts, moving with the coordinated silence of a species that had never been truly wild. The creature I'd healed looked at me with all 6 eyes, and through the neural link, I felt something I'd never expected to feel from humanity's greatest enemy: gratitude, fierce and protective and absolutely terrifying in its intensity. The healing is complete, now the real work begins. The standoff lasted exactly 47 minutes, which I know because the neural link apparently came with a built-in chronometer. Handy feature, though I would have preferred a mute button for the constant chorus of alien thoughts now permanently residing in my head. Commander Hayes arrived with a full tactical squad and, unfortunately, Elena. My former research partner looked exactly the same as she had 2 years ago, impeccably dressed, artificially calm, and carrying the kind of corporate smile that usually preceded someone getting screwed over in the name of progress. "Kira," she called through the barricaded laboratory door, "we need to talk." "Funny," I replied, watching through security cameras as war beasts positioned themselves throughout the tunnel system with military precision. "I seem to remember our last conversation ending with you selling our research and me becoming a fugitive. Forgive me if I'm not feeling chatty." Through the neural link, I felt the collective's amusement at my sarcasm. Apparently, even interdimensional hive minds appreciated good snark. "She carries the scent of deception and expensive perfume, asterisk." "The situation has changed," Hayes interjected, his voice carrying the kind of authority that usually made people snap to attention. "We're not here to arrest you. We're here to offer you a partnership." I laughed, a sound that echoed strangely through both my throat and the collective consciousness. "Let me guess. You want to weaponize my new party trick." Elena stepped closer to the door, and I could see her corporate conditioning warring with what might have been genuine concern. "Kira, what you've accomplished here is unprecedented. A stable neural bridge between human and Nexus consciousness. Do you understand what this means?" "Tell her what it means, healer, asterisk." The collective's knowledge flooded through me, showing me truths that made my stomach clench. The war beasts weren't invaders. They were refugees, fleeing something that had consumed their home worlds. The attacks on human colonies weren't conquest, they were desperate attempts to find resources, to survive in a universe that had already marked them for extinction. "It means," I said slowly, "that everything we think we know about this war is wrong." The silence that followed was deafening, both audibly and psychically. "The cutting makers follow us across the void, they harvest consciousness like fruit from trees, asterisk." Images flashed through my mind. Vast ships that moved like living things, beings that fed on sentient thought itself, entire species reduced to empty shells wandering dead worlds. The war beasts had been running for centuries, and now they'd brought their hunters straight to humanity's doorstep. "Elena," I called out, "how long have Helix's survey teams been reporting ships on the outer rim? Ships that don't match any known configuration." The pause before her answer told me everything I needed to know. "Kira, we can protect you. Both of you. All of them. But we need to understand this connection. We need to study." Study. The word tasted like ash in my mouth. "Right. Like we studied consciousness mapping. Like we studied neural architecture. Right up until you decided profit margins were more important than ethics. The cutting makers cannot be fought with weapons of metal and fire, they require something else, asterisk." Through the collective, I felt the weight of their hope, their desperate gamble on a species they'd initially seen as primitive but ultimately recognized as ingenious in ways that mattered. Humans didn't just build tools, they built connections, bonds that transcended biology. "Commander Hayes," I said, making a decision that would have terrified me if I'd been thinking clearly, "what exactly are you offering?" "Full amnesty. Research funding. A chance to work with the best xenobiologists in the system. And protection for your friends. Protection is not what we require, healer, freedom is, asterisk." I closed my eyes, feeling the collective's ancient wisdom flow through me. They'd been slaves once, before the cutting makers came. They'd been free for exactly 1 generation before the hunters found them again. Now they were asking me to choose, their freedom or my safety. The choice wasn't really a choice at all. Counteroffer, I said, opening the laboratory door and stepping out to face the assembled soldiers, Elena, and Commander Hayes. The war beast padded silently beside me, its 6 eyes reflecting the tunnel's emergency lighting like stars. I'll share what I've learned. I'll help develop defenses against what's coming. But the Nexus remains free. No cages, no laboratories, no corporate oversight. Elena looked like I'd just suggested burning down the entire military-industrial complex, which, honestly, wasn't the worst idea I'd had this week. And if we refuse? Hayes asked. I smiled, feeling the collective strength flowing through the neural link, sensing dozens of war beasts positioned throughout the tunnels, and knowing that somewhere in the darkness between stars, something far worse than either of our species was already heading this way. Commander, you've been thinking about this all wrong. I didn't heal a war beast. I joined a network that's been preparing for humanity's first real test for longer than our species has existed. And now, whether you like it or not, we're all in this together. The creature beside me made that purring death rattle sound again, but this time, I understood it perfectly. It was laughter, ancient and knowing and absolutely terrifying in its implications. The real war begins now, healer, are your people ready? Looking at Elena's corporate horror and Hayes's military calculations, I had to admit the honest answer was probably no. But then again, neither had the Nexus been ready when their world burned. Sometimes survival wasn't about being ready. Sometimes it was just about being stubborn enough to keep fighting when everything else failed. And if there was one thing humans excelled at, it was being absolutely, ridiculously stubborn.